It's time for AggroChat, the official podcast of the Tales of the Aggronaut blog and stalwart gaming community, where we talk about stuff and things, and the stuff about the things, and sometimes gaming. I'm Belgast, and let's start the show. Hey folks, it's that time again. Time for another episode of AggroChat. This is episode 218. Tonight I'm joined by Ashgar.
Hello.
Grace.
Hi.
Kodra.
Hey.
Tam.
Hello.
And Thalen.
Hey there.
The gang's all here.
Yeah, so tonight is probably going to be a lot of World of Warcraft stuff, because if you tuned in last week, you'll know that Tam apparently decided to play and has had variable levels of luck with that.
Yeah.
I feel like we need to go into the whole story of what happened.
Okay. Sure, we could do that thing.
It's a pretty good story.
Do you want to start with that? Was that where I'm starting?
I mean, I feel like that's a good option because it's funny.
Fair. All right. So, so you may know that I haven't seriously played WoW in a very long time. And I have a lot of but I played it back I played it back at the start. So, it's been a while for some of these characters, including some characters that were hadn't been played since Cataclysm. And
Cataclysm? You sure you played that shaman since Wrath?
Yeah. Okay. Since before Cataclysm, let's be clear. And they weren't in great shape, turns out. Like, I had a character that I last logged into in probably 2006, maybe? Which meant that I had a whole quest log full of stuff that wasn't working right, and a bunch of items that are just, you can't get anymore, which don't exist anymore. And I guess the last thing that I was doing on this character was running Upper Spire for a lark. Like, just for fun. I don't know why. It's WoW. Sometimes you run a dungeon that's well out of relevancy because, sure, why not?
Given timing, it's not unlikely that I couldn't solo the last boss, and I asked you to help me with it.
It's entirely possible. But anyway, apparently I log into this character, and I hadn't looked in my inventory because I know that opening your inventory on an old WoW character is a really quick way to not want to play the game anymore. So I didn't do that thing. So I ran around a bit, and I was like, oh, I was trying to figure out, and I started in like the 0 point in Orgrimmar. I'm like, whatever. Stuff has changed. I'm sure it just reset my position. No big deal. And I go to figure out what mount I want to fly around on, because I had a mount that I liked on that character and I couldn't use it. And I'm like, why can't I use it? And I was wrong. It wasn't the flying machine. It was the magic carpet. But when I looked, I was like, why can't I use this thing? I had the skill, but my professions had been wiped. Like, just all of it. Every part of my professions were just gone. And I was like, that seems wrong. Did professions like crazy change? And Grace was like, no, I haven't changed that much. And then I open then I try to use the bank, and the bank window just won't open. Like, I'll get the dialogue from the banker, but like the window would never open. So I couldn't look in my bank. And I opened my inventory and had a whole inventory full of what's his name's face and question marks. Which was about the point where I decided I needed to petition a GM. Because I was like, this is probably bad. So get in touch with the GM shockingly quickly. Have a chat with this, because I was like a character. I guess there's whatever my issue was, like, hey, this is a character is not playable. Let's deal with it quickly. Get a fairly quick response back from the GM. I'm like, hey, I haven't logged into this character for a while, but there seem to be a bunch of issues. GM looks at it and is like, I need to escalate this. It was like the second or third thing they said to me. Like, need to escalate this. And long story short, what apparently happened to this character was the last time I had played it, I crashed out of Upper Spire while in the process of looting something, as, happens sometimes, and it never logged back into that character. And then Cataclysm happened, which meant that the zone that my character was in was a null pointer, and the item I was looting from the mob I was looting were both null pointers. So there was the way it was described to me was everything involving an item with this character was broken. Yeah, because the very last thing in the log was an open loot window like event, and there was no actual looting of anything event, nor was there closed loot window event. And so some cascade failure. And like when I logged back into the character, it was like, oh, we thought of what happened if you logged out in a zone that doesn't exist anymore because we know people were going to do that, and we just reset your position. Whatever. Solved. So it wasn't just like, oh, this character's broke. But as it turns out,
you found an edge case.
I found an edge case. And oh wow, what a doozy it was. It was the most apologetic GM, or the most apologetic like CSR I've ever had for anything ever. Because this was apparently a person who looked at the situation and was like, oh, this is somebody who's played this game since launch, or basically since launch, and is coming back and has tried to log on to their probably beloved character, and it's my job to tell them that character is potentially unfixable. Like,
did they manage to fix it?
Oh no, absolutely not. So it was like, okay, well, we can try to rebuild this character, but it might take a few weeks. Because they tried to fix something and asked me to log it in, and WoW hard crashed. And so that wasn't great. I have no idea what was going on behind the scenes because they weren't gonna go into detail. But long story short, it was not a character in a good situation. But their resolution, like I said, the most apologetic CSR imaginable, is like, what can we do to fix this? I was like, look, I just want to play a character. I'm not super married to this character. It's log. Everything that mattered with this character was out of date. I probably, like, the faction stuff probably doesn't even matter.
Which character was it?
It was my shaman from Wrath.
So it wasn't the character that had a binding of Thunder Fury and Exalted with Nozdormu.
No. I was Exalted with a bunch of other stuff, but no, not that one.
Although Exalted with Nozdormu is like trivial anymore.
Yeah. But yeah, no, it wasn't a character that had like some long-standing legacy anything. All of the stuff that I cared about, like appearance-wise, was there, so whatever. I wasn't like, there wasn't going to be super broken up about it. And so the GM was like, so how about if you quit the game, I will delete this character and create a new one with the same name and appearance. Leave it in your character pane and give you a gratis 110 boost token. Will that be okay? I was like, yeah, that's fine. That's frankly better than what I was gonna get. And I also got some like promo Blizzard dollars or whatever.
They're all fun bucks.
Yeah. But yeah, that character was broken. Although to their credit, I logged in with a mail with a bunch of like GM reputation items, which set all of my reputations back to whatever they were before. So, you know, I appreciate that. It was a great customer service. But
yeah,
it was
so like it was funny the night that this was happening, because like I couldn't really talk because one, I was going into coughing fits nonstop, and I think Grace, you messaged me in WoW and was like, you need to get on TeamSpeak and listen to this.
I mean, it was such an epic saga to
it just
be there
kept
listening to this happen in real time, because that customer service rep was like very responsive, and this was happening at a very quick pace over the course of one evening. It wasn't like some drawn out thing. It was kind of impressive.
Yeah, this was definitely somebody that was like, oh no, like
things are seriously broken.
Things are super broken, and this is like CSR nightmare, because if they tell me this character is unrecoverable, like every bit of language was this carefully not saying that this character was unrecoverable, but like I can read between the lines. And like it's probably bad. It's probably a CSR's worst nightmare to be like, I have to tell this player that their character is unrecoverable because they are going to entirely justifiably freak out. And like, there's nothing I can do, and it's going to create this terrible experience, and like I'm going to get shouted at, and like I'm not going to be able to do anything about it. It was very funny watching having the tone. Like as soon as it became apparent that like I didn't care that much, and I wasn't going to have a tiny freak out session. It was like the relief coming from the other side of the chat box was palpable, and like he was like making jokes and, you know, super responsive. Let's do everything we can. I'll do everything I can do in my power to fix this. But like, I'm so glad this was not a nightmare situation for me.
Yeah.
But yes, so I have a functional shaman.
So in the land of what's happened since the last time we talked, I believe at this, like, we weren't 120 yet, were we, Grace?
I think we may have been, but well, I'm not sure that you were, and I was just barely.
So we're now in the end game, sort of, a little bit, marginally geared. Have managed to run some dungeons,
some heroics.
Yeah.
I've managed to run every possible normal dungeon and a handful of heroic.
I feel like the dungeon experience is, like, some of it is really amazing, and some of it feels kind of uneven as far as the difficulty of specific dungeons as compared to other dungeons. Like, some of the dungeons seem to be, like, pretty easy and, like, a pretty chill, relaxing run. And then there's Underrot, and whatever the hell that troll one is with the horrible puddles of poo.
I actually like that place, but it does have some issues. Ataldazar. I have to run it again because one of the interesting things that keeps happening this expansion is that, like, as you gain rep with the various factions, they have more story and more quests for you to do. And I, like, just got some, like, a whole slew of quests that opened up. I mean, kind of short, but that expanded on some pretty important story points and are sending me back into that dungeon again. Like, I definitely... I have mixed feelings about the way that they're handling some of the story this time around, and a lot of it harkens back to Suramar and the rep gating thing. And on the one hand, I really like the story, and it does feel sort of nice to have additional things, you know, surprises open up as you increase your reputation. But on the other hand, there's still some major things that are gated behind rep, and that feels bad. Like the war campaign stuff is very, very gated. And I mean, it's going through quickly. The expansion's only been out for a little while, and I'm almost through it all. But still, it's frustrating to have to kind of grind through stuff to get to that.
Yeah, I've pretty much decided after my experience with Legion, where I went in with basically zero expectations, was pleasantly surprised, and then was deeply turned off by the rep grind. I'm basically just going to get characters to whatever, like 120, and probably just stop playing them.
I mean, I suspect that you'll get characters to finished with the storylines and stop playing them, and that will probably be well after 120.
That's fair.
But like, that was something that was also a pleasant surprise this expansion. Was like, I was there, you know, there's 3 zones, big gigantic zones for each faction, and I completed 2 of them and was maybe a quarter of the way through the third one, if that, when I dinged 120. And had tons of story and stuff to do even after I hit the level cap.
Yeah, that's tracking really close. Like, I'm 114, and mostly by accident. Like, I haven't really been playing that much, but I've done the one zone I've been in. So yeah, but yeah, like, I feel like their storytelling has gotten a lot better and easier to follow as they've changed their content model, and I think that's a really good thing.
The thing that feels weird, though, is the way that a lot of the story is gated on reputation, but not, like, full bars of reputation.
Yeah, so that's it is another odd thing. Like, the war campaign stuff is gated at, like, 1/4 of the way through this reputation bar and 3/4 of the way through, and it's like, I don't know, it feels extra artificial, I guess. Like on top of the normal like artificiality of gating things behind rep.
Oh no, that seems like a good idea.
I don't. It doesn't feel good. Like it just doesn't feel like a smooth progression in any way. Like it just feels like they were gonna put it behind the regular breakpoints, but then probably it gated people too slowly to get to the like war campaign, warfront stuff that they've like people are supposed to be excited about. And
let them have more than 4 breakpoints. The reputation system at this point might be feeling its age a bit.
I mean, there is that, but I don't know, it felt a little weird, and because some like having a breakpoint at the reputation and then 1/4 and then 3/4 and then at the next breakpoint, it's like a very uneven feeling.
It just kind of feels like you get randomly asked to go do things. Like all of a sudden, Blight Caller, or I'm not sure who you're working for on the Alliance side, but they'll just like say, "Oh, I need you to come back to town because I've got a quest for you now," and then it kind of picks up. So I don't know, like the pacing of this content feels really weird, mostly because like in Legion, once you finish the Order Hall, so you had a lot of different layered things. You had the main story of the zones, then you had your Order Hall, and then you also had Suramar, which was the more gated content. So like there was a lot of stuff going on, but it felt kind of straightforward. Whereas this kind of feels all over the place. Like you've got quests for the factions that unlock at various points. You've got the Warframe, or the War Campaign that unlocks at certain points, and so like it feels like at 120 I should be done with things, but I'm very much not done with things, but kind of artificially not done with things.
And that's on top of having all the leftover story quests from leveling that you definitely will not have finished by the time you hit 120. That you're trying to kind of cram in around the corners of doing the traditional endgame stuff.
I feel pretty good about that, because I remember a time when you had to do every quest, no matter how miserable, and kill a whole bunch of extra mobs, and still not be quite high enough level, so you probably had to grind some dungeons just to keep pace with leveling.
I mean, I like having those extra quests left over, like, don't get me wrong, but it feels oddly crammed in with all of the other things and the pacing of the other things that there are to do at 120.
That's fair.
I don't know, like, I'm enjoying myself. I'm playing the heck out of this game. But it feels, something about the pacing of it definitely feels off. And it doesn't help that, with Legion, world quests were new and, like, kind of cool, and definitely they're a huge step up from, just dailies. But they're not new or cool now. We've been doing them forever, and now we just have more of them, and they're not significantly different from what we've already been doing. So they don't have the benefit, I guess, of that little bit of novelty that they did in Legion.
That's fair.
And in Legion, they felt like they were part of a larger thing that was going on. Like, you're helping to build out your Order Hall. And I just don't feel as connected to the war campaign boat as I did the Garrison or the Order Hall.
That is definitely true. And even, I should be excited about, I'm going to be able to get an upgrade, but, like, a lot of the upgrades are not that exciting. Like, they're not that substantial, or they buff something that I don't even know what it is or why I should care about it, like the island. They're kind of a bust for me. And, like, one whole tier is just buffing something about the island that I don't even know what it does.
I feel like a lot of effort was put into rebalancing how PvP worked and the PvP rewards, and based on everything I'm hearing, War Mode is a complete bust. As we thought it would be. Like, there were a bunch of people that leveled in War Mode, and then once they stopped leveling, flipped it right back off.
I'm shocked. Shocked, I say.
Apparently, it's so much so that, like, in a call the other day, Blizzard said that they were looking at, adding new rewards to try and tempt players to go into War Mode.
But the bribes aren't big enough. We need to make the bribes bigger.
Not going to. Never mind. We already talked about why that is earlier.
Yeah. I mean,
need more incentive to become content.
Yeah, so like tank Q bonuses don't really make that big of a difference. Do you think you can incentivize War Mode enough to make it make more difference than tank mode?
No.
To be fair, the tank bonuses not actually
have
that
been
great.
Big enough to in the past incentivize that sort of thing.
Yeah, like in the past they have, and currently they're not that exciting.
No,
and I can tell they're not that exciting because I get healer bonuses a lot lately.
Yeah.
And when the tank bonus is exciting, I never see a healer bonus.
So the funny thing is like the other night when we were chaining heroics, do you know, like past the first one, do you know what my tank bonus was? Like 15 Azurite. 15.
Yeah.
I have no concept of that being good or terrible.
It's not even moving the dial forward.
Yeah, like so my
how many Azurites does it take roughly to upgrade anything?
My Azurite thing, my neck piece is level 17, and it takes 17,324 artifact power to get to the next level.
Well.
Yeah, so 15 doesn't matter at all. Supposedly this next week they're kicking in the first of the catch-up mechanics for artifact power, so that like everyone will start gaining faster. But yeah, no, like, and I think that's part of it too, is the amount of artifact power that you get from doing anything just feels totally anemic, that it doesn't even register that I just gained artifact power. I mean, it was maybe kind of cool for like the first couple levels, but yeah. But I do find it funny that like that War Mode ended up exactly like we thought it was going to.
Yeah.
And like one of the complaints is, I guess they're segregating out War Mode groups from everyone else's groups, and the War Mode players can't find groups.
Wow.
I'm
for like
just
world
so
groups.
sad for them.
Yeah.
So sad. I mean, they could just go into Orgrimmar and turn that off and get as many groups as they want.
I mean, so the thing is like, I have to say, the opposite side of the coin is, like, running around Drustvar, or what are Tierguard Sound, or whatever. Like, it's totally chill. Nobody cares if I get flagged.
Yeah, that has been a great experience, actually. That, like, I've accidentally run into Alliance Towns on many occasions and gotten myself flagged. And usually when I do that in WoW, I get this bit of anxiety because it means at some point or other someone's going to come along and mess with me. And that just never happens. With War Mode there, all the people who would do that are in War Mode, and they can't see me. So, and all the people who do see me are probably people just like me, and look at someone who's flagged and goes, I'm not messing with them. That's not worth my time. It's great.
I have noticed that, and I sort of had never run into the thing because I don't often accidentally flag or whatever, but I have noticed a lot more. I help some. What I've noticed a lot more of is I fight some group elite with some horde people, and it works. That part is nice. Incidentally, for Grace's sake, I promise I will give these trolls another shot.
I think they deserve a shot. Like, I understand that you're engrossed in the Kultira thing, and frankly, like, I look at their zones when I'm over there, and I look at, like, their dungeon and the little bit of story I've seen, like, playing my alts, and, like, I want to see all of that stuff, too. Like, I don't begrudge you being into that, but I also think that the troll side is probably just as good if you give it a chance.
Which zone did you start with?
Me?
Yes, and troll side.
I didn't. I
Okay.
I got as far as it showing me the conceit, where it was a bunch of like trolls with the, I don't know. I find the like troll racial aesthetic kind of uncomfortable.
Oh my god, I love the trolls.
Just because it's like, I don't know. I find it kind of uncomfortable for reasons that have nothing to do with it and everything to do with like weird cultural things. And so I've kind of had a hard time getting into trolls in general in WoW for that reason. And so this was very like, I don't know, magic civilized savages thing. I thought the city was cool, and the city's freaking huge.
Yeah, their city, I think, is even bigger than the Alliance's city in Kultiras. Like, it takes up most of its own.
Yeah, and I didn't really, and I don't know, neither of the characters really like interested me all that much, and so
man,
and like I obviously they didn't have like a lot of time to interest me, but I was like, oh, it's, I don't know, characters I feel like I've seen before. I'll get to them eventually. I'm not that excited.
Man, I had a totally different feeling after that opening cinematic.
With the boats and stuff?
Like, Talanji is a badass.
Yeah, Talanji is amazing. And coming into this expansion and knowing what the different zones were, like, I looked at Kultiras and was like, that's where I want to be. Like, they have boats, they have, like, tentacle cultists, they have, like, sea creatures and sea shanties. Like, that's my aesthetic. That's where I want to be. And then I did that, played through the opening of the Horde side and saw that cinematic where Talanji is like, now I'm gonna summon a giant dinosaur, Loa, and it's gonna headbutt us to victory. And I was sold.
Okay. So yes, I saw that and was like, I guess that's cool. Like, it's another random person who's randomly crazy powerful.
Yeah, but you find out, like, the thing is, like, you find out what the hell Rezon is. I mean, during, like, I guess that's the thing. For me, the reason why I love the trolls is I love their pantheons of gods.
Yeah.
Like, I love the Loas that they have, and, like, that's probably one of my favorite aspects in the past when we got new WoW content is, like, we got more trolls, and we got another crazy pantheon of animal spirits that we help out.
So here,
and this is like all animal spirits all the time.
And I never cared that much for the trolls. Like, up until now, like, I felt pretty meh about the fact that, like, oh god, we're gonna spend the whole expansion with the trolls. Like, they're okay, but
yeah.
But I actually enjoyed sort of learning a little bit more about the pantheon and, like, understanding it a little bit better, and, like, where all the different like subcultures of trolls all come from, and what their different pantheons are and why, and how they all fit together in a way that sort of has been in the game before, but I never paid much attention to, because it was usually just, oh, it's the troll dungeon for this expansion, and it's gonna be whatever kind of flavor trolls we have this time. Like,
yeah.
This kind of did a really nice job of tying it all together in a way that made sense.
Yeah. Well, I guess I didn't really, it wasn't that I disliked it. It was just that it didn't, like, light my world on fire. I didn't get there and see the city and be like, oh yes, I need to see what happens next. It was sort of like, I kind of know where this is going to go in broad strokes. I'm going to go do a bunch of favors, and people are going to like me for it. And
you'd think that,
sure, and it may surprise me.
That's also the sum of quests in MMOs in general.
Yeah, I mean that is going to happen on both sides of the fence to some extent.
It's true, but like, so I don't has anybody here played the Alliance side stuff? Any of the intro?
Like through the intro and like out of like a little bit of the first zone, like,
so, like,
one or two levels worth.
The thing that really like sold me was, okay, here's an interesting story that I actually know that we're gonna see a little bit more detail into, and I've always kind of wondered about. And I know I've criticized WoW for kind of spending too much time on its like memories of Warcraft 3, but like they're also really good at it. And this was one of those things that I've always sort of wondered about. And then it's like, oh, hey, this diplomatic mission goes real bad instantly. And now you're in prison, and that's where you start. And you've got to figure out how you're going to make good on this from there. And like, that's really interesting to me, because it's like, okay, I didn't see this coming.
See, when you're talking about them cribbing from Elder Scrolls, I thought maybe that was what you were talking about.
I mean, I started from prison, and like the very first thing is me leaving prison and figuring out like, what do I do now? And so there's this like overarching thing that I'm interested in, and it introduces me to some interesting characters really fast. And like that was for me an instant hook, whereas the troll one wasn't. And that's just why I've been playing more. Like, I didn't dislike it. It was just like one of these was instantly hooked me, and the other one did not.
I can definitely see that. I
like eventually with the trolls, it's Troll Wakanda.
It is. I mean, the achievement for the zone is Zandalar forever.
Yeah, and I think that when I sit down and play it and get into it, it'll be really cool. But my immediate which one of these do I want to play right now was Kul Tiras was way stronger for me.
I would suggest that, like, once you finally get down to where you're picking a zone, like, I kind of suggest starting in the desert.
Either there or in the city. Starting with the blood trolls in the swamp is probably not a good idea. It's certainly the least charming, the most troubling of the 3 zones.
You just told me one of them was a desert.
Yeah, look, we picked the desert first. Like, we were sitting there on the day that this came out, and we went, let's do the desert first so we can get it over with.
Yes.
And actually, like, it was pretty good. It was still maybe the weakest of the 3, but it had a lot of charm, and it had Dolly and Dot and the alpaca song, which goes a long way.
And it had a really cool story arc with the Sethrak.
I definitely started with the zone in Kul Tiras that I was like, what is the zone I'm going to probably like the least? Oh, hey, it's not Ravenhold. It's Ravenloft again, or it's Ravenloft.
Drustvar.
Yeah, it's Drustvar. It's generic haunted thing again.
Yeah, we have a lot of those in WoW and other MMOs.
But there's some of my favorite areas.
Oh, and it has the best, like, one of the best dungeons, frankly. Like, the Haunted House dungeon is possibly better than Final Fantasy's version.
Like, I mean, it's where I'm at right now, and it's pretty cool. But yeah, like, I came in here and I was like, this is not going to be my thing. And it turns out that I actually like the zone a lot. It's got a bunch of characters that I think are really cool. It's got some surprising variants in the story. It's not just like, oh, everybody's haunted all the time. Because I've played that zone before.
I don't know much about it from the Horde side, other than there's witches, and Eitrig does not like witches.
Yeah, there's witches, and the witches are bad. It's very Transylvania. Bell, you will really like it should you end up playing it. It's a very Bell.
I already like it. I mean, the bit I've seen Horde side.
It's a very Bell zone. It is not a me zone, but it is a very Bell zone.
I just really enjoyed it, because from the Horde side, like, all you see is this little vignette of, like, the weirdest buddy cop pairing of Eitrig and Gallywix, and, like, being afraid of witches. And it, like, I was like, what are we doing? What is happening? But it was pretty fun.
Speaking of leaders I don't entirely understand, what is Gallywix even doing nowadays?
Being horrible.
Yeah, basically being horrible. I guess helping. Well, like, he discovered Azerite, so he has that going for him.
Well, I mean, the goblins discovered Azerite.
Like, he's gonna take credit for anything any goblin ever did that was good, so...
I mean, because pretty much it follows goblin culture. What is this? Can I make a bomb out of it?
Can I make a buck off of it?
I think another big thing this week was the Queen Azshara cinematic.
Yes! Finally got around to watching it. I, like, totally spaced out on it the day it came out. But it was Very well done. Although, like, I'm still confused. Like, I'm not opposed to the fact that Queen Azshara apparently is like Ursula the Sea Witch, but I
When did this happen?
Yeah, I don't know. That was my question. Like, she's got a lot of tentacles, and I approve of that. But like,
Has
You're here
she
for
not been in WoW before, or is she just
She's
is this a
never
new model?
She's never been in
WoW.
WoW. There are a lot of statues of her as a big snake thing.
right, like there's a lot of statues of her as a Naga, and there's been a couple of quests actually. In Legion, there was at least one quest where she, like, a vision of her would appear or something, and she's always been a Naga.
But now she's kind of like an amalgam of an old god and a Naga.
I mean, I'm definitely here for it, but I was surprised.
I have no idea what was going on there, and I feel like I had a different idea of what Azshara was, but here we are.
I mean, we've seen how quickly Old God Tank can progress, so...
Yeah.
But the thing that I liked about that cinematic was that, like, she was kind of dying, or people were dying, and she was still being a badass. And,
Yeah.
like, if anyone could negotiate with an old god, I guess it's Azshara, and she did, and she won.
Yeah.
Like, she's
Gotta go better than the whole Legion thing, right?
That was a cool cinematic. I have not liked all of them. I liked that one a lot.
I definitely did not like the Sylvanas one, but
I'm not happy with Sylvanas' treatment in this entire expansion so far, so...
Yes. Agreed. The Jaina one, like, I surprisingly loved. I don't love Jaina, but between that and her entrance in the Lordaeron scenario, like, I'm kind of coming around a bit on Jaina.
Oh, so, okay. So Jaina Proudmoore is my favorite Warcraft character, full stop, which is the other reason why Kultiris was not...
Oh.
Yeah,
like,
that makes sense.
Like, yeah.
Jaina Proudmoore was one of the characters I hated the most because of all the times I've been in Icecrown and had to listen to her weep forever. I used to make a game out of it. Can I clear the entire Plague Wing before Jaina stops crying?
Yep.
See, I not only never did that in...
You did it Hornside, so you got Sourfang instead.
Yeah, I never...
And Sourfang was fine. Like, I did
Sourfang
it
was
1,000 times on Hornside, and I, like,
Because
still
we
don't
named
hate
him
Sourfang.
Dranosh.
I mean,
Yeah.
Sure.
I've heard both, okay? I've heard both a lot, but the Jaina weeping, that just drove me up a wall.
No,
Yeah.
when we did when they had the old soldier thing, like, I was watching it, and in my out loud voice said, we named him Trash.
Exactly.
But other than that, I like Sourfang fine.
Yeah, I'm fine with Warrior Dad. But yeah, it's like, Jaina's never been a character I was terribly fond of.
Yeah, Jaina is... Jaina is start to finish my favorite Warcraft character, and I have had a lot of frustration when they have not done well by her character.
Which they have
had a lot of not doing well by her character.
Yeah.
Well, and it's done a lot. It's done a number on my appreciation for World of Warcraft as a game. I feel about Jaina the way Grace feels about Sylvanas.
That's fair.
And like, which was the other reason why Kultiris was such a huge sell. Like, I'm gonna go with Jaina to go try to do this thing. This is a terrible idea.
Clearly, you're having a better expansion than Grace is so far with those main characters.
Yeah, I mean,
That's
I'm
why I'm so
enjoying
sad
the expansion, but yeah, they did not do very well by Sylvanas with the expansion, and it's upsetting because they did so right with a lot of other things with the story this time around, but not that piece of it. And I'm afraid that by the time they do whatever they're gonna do to fix it, because I'm sure they have something in mind one way or the other, I'm gonna be so unhappy and checked out with that aspect of the story that I'm not sure if I will, like, come around.
So the interesting rumor that I've heard, speaking of direction of where things are going, is that the reason why the starting zones were fairly limited in scope is that they plan on doing more of the Argus thing where, like, they keep adding more islands to go to.
I mean, that's fine. that doesn't surprise me, considering like the Argus thing seemed to work out well for them. I liked some things about Argus, and I really disliked some other things about Argus, but I mean, it definitely seemed to work.
I mean, getting an additional zone worth of content was interesting. That
was awesome.
That was so vastly different than what we were used to.
Yeah, it was such a huge shock, and it was a ton of extra content. Just there were some things about not having flying, not immediately after being able to unlock flying, getting a zone where you couldn't fly again was frustrating, and the fact that the zone was very difficult and very, very densely packed was very painful.
Yeah.
But having an entire extra continent worth of stuff to do in the middle of an expansion, okay, that's good.
I was really deeply concerned earlier this week about the expansion and whether or not I had picked the wrong class, because the general funness of Prot Warrior seems to have been damaged a bit. Ignore Pain finally got nerfed into the ground to where it's no longer even really worth casting. So that's part of it. But then the dungeons that we ran kind of made me feel a little bit better. I'm still kind of entertaining leveling something else and seeing how that feels.
I recommend Demon Hunter.
Yeah, I was going to level my Demon Hunter, because Demon Hunter still feels really fun and is not as fiddly of maintain all the buffs.
Demon Hunter is definitely what I'm going to play hard side, probably. Because it's really fun.
Prot has become all about, can you keep shield block up? Can you keep shield block up all the time? And the cooldowns of it keep you from keeping it up all the time, so you have to kind of do some stuff to try and make up for the fact that you're going to have breaks where you don't have shield block. And also, in general, I feel rage starved because they changed the rage calculation.
Again?
Yes.
Gasp.
It is no longer based on damage dealt at all. It is you doing melee attacks and melee attacks being done to you, but it's whatever the formula is feels like I'm rage starved all the time. And as a result, I've kind of had to massively change up my spec and rotation to make things work.
It was my opinion in Legion that rage was basically a non-factor.
It was, yeah. No, I had all the rage in the world in Legion. And it
that's
felt
been
amazing.
The case a number of times.
Yeah.
And they've gone back and fixed the rage formula, I don't know how many times now.
Right.
A lot.
Right. And what they'll do is they'll have an overcorrection like this, which we had during at least part of Burning Crusade, to where, I have no rage. There's nothing I can do for rage.
Yeah, but in Burning Crusade, we still had the case where warriors scaled exponentially.
Yeah. I still think, as I get more gear, as I've gotten more gear, my survival has gone up significantly. It's just, I think I'm just going to be a very gear-locked class, like warriors often have been. But in Legion, it didn't feel quite so much that. It felt like I had plenty of rage to spend on proactive things.
Yeah.
And now it's mostly I either get to attack or I get to keep up the mitigation. I have enough rage for one or the other. It's mostly I just don't get to cast Revenge that much, which greatly hurts aggro. And aggro is back a thing.
I heard that too.
I'm noticing that.
thing.
I'm noticing that in this dungeon.
Yeah, you will absolutely pull aggro off of your tank, because that's a thing. And it's really bad in certain situations where, there's a bunch of stuff on the ground, and I need to not stand in it, and I also need to kite things back. And oh wait, stuff got pulled aggro off.
The rogue's tanking now.
Or Grace is tanking.
Yeah,
that was
that's
what
definitely
happened.
been a thing a few times.
There's less you can do about that one, so that's a problem.
And that's
what
honestly
Fate is
kind of the concern I have about Demon Hunter tanking is, I don't know if they have enough AoE threat.
They have whatever the Burning Sigil is, so I think they'll be fine.
Maybe? I don't know. We'll just have to see. I've played a little bit already on the Demon Hunter, and it definitely seems like I just don't care about damage, because I'm going to heal myself faster than I can take damage. So I may end up swapping over to that at some point. Warrior does not feel like it's in a great place.
That's unfortunate.
Now, Fury, on the other hand, seems like it's an amazing place.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, Whirlwind is now back as part of the filler rotation in Fury instead of whatever that other thing that they had last expansion.
Whirlwind was fun, and I missed it.
Yeah, like you're now using Whirlwind again, and it's like it feels like old Fury. So yeah, worst case scenario, even if I don't end up tanking on this character, I'll end up doing Fury and DPSing. Anyway, rogues.
Oh, just rogue feels good. Like, I mean, I haven't played a rogue since Wrath because, wow, rogues were terrible in Wrath. Or, I don't know, they were probably fine, but Death Knight was just better. But I'm having more fun playing a rogue since... I'm having more fun playing a rogue than I have since vanilla.
Ooh.
What spec are you going with?
Subtlety.
Teleport rogue.
I'm a teleport rogue. It's super fun. I don't know if it's competitive or good. I don't care. I'm doing well enough. I'm topping the meters on this dungeon, but who knows if that's meaningful at all. I don't know if subtlety is a thing that like I would regret playing if I actually cared, but I don't regret playing it right now.
Last time I played a rogue, I was playing Outlaw, and it wasn't a really great spec.
Yeah,
I was Assassin for Legion. I used to play subtlety, but I don't know. I'm not a huge fan of melee in the first place. I'm not the right person to ask about rogues anyway.
That's fair. I'm really enjoying it. I've got a bag of tricks. I can sneak around.
I haven't really played subtlety since the Hemo days.
Yeah, like my favorite time in vanilla was playing a Hemo subtlety rogue by exploiting lots of
weapon damage calculations, among other things.
Yes, exploiting both a particular broken weapon and broken weapon damage calculations, and it was incredibly fun. And playing subtlety in this expansion feels like doing that. Like it feels shockingly great. The other thing is I am enjoying the storytelling. I enjoyed the storytelling fine in Legion. I'm enjoying the storytelling in Battle for Azeroth, at least on the Alliance side, more than I have, again, since vanilla. Like, I like the story beats. I like the stuff that's going on. I like how down to earth it feels. I mean, I've griped about it before, but my big frustration with Burning Crusade was that it had trouble. It had some like tonal trouble where, oh, hey, you're the super amazing. Because you're the super amazing, you do super amazing things. But like, then you also do incredibly menial things, and it doesn't make any sense that you would be doing them. Like, oh, hey, god-slaying hero, could you get my mail?
But I have to level up my postmaster level.
Yeah. Well, and we've talked about FF14, where FF14 really like cements your place in the world, where it's like, oh yeah, no, people recognize how stupidly powerful a god-slaying person you are, but like also you're dealing with problems that don't really work. They don't really have that solution. I'm like, okay, I can get behind that. But WoW is, at least in my experience, has never been all that good at that, where it's sort of like, oh, hey, a new expansion is out and now you're a chump again. But I also really like when WoW is telling stories about you being like a hero, but not a world-spanning ultra superhero. Like, I really enjoy those kinds of stories.
Okay, Tam, I think it's time.
Oh,
Give us your defense of humans in role-playing games.
Okay. This was spawned out of a conversation I was having with Shiana earlier, and then Grace slightly less early. So like, I get it. Humans are boring. You're just a human. Blah blah. Whatever. We don't like humans. They're not interesting. And they're like my favorite race to play in RPGs, or at least not always my favorite race to play in RPGs, but often my favorite stories because so much can be assumed about them. It doesn't take a ton of world building for you to understand what's going on. And so you can get into more complicated stories and more sort of interesting back and forths a lot faster and have a lot more variety than a lot of other fantasy races. Like other fantasy races tend to fall into the like almost all of their stories sort of center around the same theme or two. It was something I remember like in writing ESO, we struggled with a lot because we sort of wanted to tie in every story to kind of reinforce the 9 races we had to characterize. And there's no like basic human in that setting. But I very rarely see like interesting complex political stories around non-human that are most majority non-human races. We definitely saw it in like the elves in FF14 in Heavensward, which I think was great. Although a lot of humans there. But it's really, I find it really easy to fall into the sort of like the trope of the thing that's special about this race is they're all about honor and they fight a lot and they're all about honor. And every bit of content you do is about fighting or honor. And if you're not doing those things, then they're referencing fighting and honor. Like, oh no, you're going to do some farming because you're going to do some farming for this race. And this person's really like has issues because they're a farmer in this race that's all about fighting and honor. And so that's the conflict is they're a farmer, so they don't fight or do honor. Whereas, I don't know, I feel like I get a wider breadth of stories for human races, and it leads to a wider breadth of stories because you can assume, because it's like such a blank slate and they're not necessarily, you don't have to world build the race, you can world build the relationships that race has. Sometimes I like to be regular and vanilla because there's interesting subtle complexity in that.
So hearing that, when it comes to Troll Town, you should absolutely do the city first. Yep, no question.
Because I can see some places where you will look at that and see confirmation of like, oh, these are trolls and they're about, they're weird gods and their pantheons and stuff, and lots of things will tie back to that. But there's also really interesting political story, other things going on, and I guess like as a counterpoint, like I agree when fantasy races are done poorly and they're all about their one or two aspects, that can get pretty old pretty quick. But I think it brings in a lot more interesting additional flavor if they have an interesting story and they also have the elements that make them unique. If those elements are actually unique and not, they're elves and they like nature, or they're orcs and they have honor and they fight a lot. There's other bits of flavor there, and for me that is preferable to boring humans, because frankly, like, I'm a boring human and I have enough of politics in the real world, and I want to play games to see unique, interesting, different things and have the extra bit of flavor. And I do think there's a difference between like enjoying the world building and the story, and actually like playing a race in a game. Because I don't mind if a game has humans in it, like that's fine. But like if there's an option to be literally anything other than human, I will probably do it.
Yeah,
because, I for a character, for myself, like I'm already human. I don't need to be that in game.
I tend to gravitate towards human characters because I really like the sort of organizations and relationships that arise out of. I mean, like, I agree. I totally agree that done well, you can do other fantasy races or non-fan or sci-fi races or whatever very well, and when they're done well, they're great. I just find that when I play stuff, I'll often see like the storytellers try harder with humans, I think, because they know they have to be interesting. Otherwise, it's like, why do I care? Whereas a lot of times it's like, oh, we need to do some elf filler content. Let's do something about how they're worried about some trees. And it becomes super predictable. Whereas like human filler content is all over the board.
All the non-human races have their hats. Humans are allowed to wear all the hats usually.
Yeah.
And I think that's the reason why a lot of times I'll gravitate towards a human, is because, especially if you're in a setting where there are like buffs, but like to get that buff you also take some penalty. Humans tend to be like the straight neutral positive negative. Like they don't have any real positives.
Humans are overpowered in D&D and always have been.
That's true.
Yeah, I mean, like
because
they
the negatives
have,
for
like,
being a non-human have always overpowered the positives.
Right.
All
I think
the way
that's
back
a problem
to the days
too.
of you can't level beyond like level 7 if you're a dwarf or whatever. Boy, that was dumb.
Like I definitely think that's a problem. Should definitely be balance. And I feel like your choice of race in a fantasy game should ultimately amount to a mostly aesthetic or cosmetic choice. Like having some differences is fun, but making those be the reason you choose the thing versus the interestingness of that race.
I mean, I absolutely went Imperial in Elder Scrolls Online because of the traits that they had. Like, it was absolutely, I'm going to be a tank, and this is probably the best tanky race.
Racial selection in ESO makes very, very little difference because the racial buffs are so small. But Imperials are good, and Orcs are good, and Red Guards are good, and Khajiit are good. So, make your choice, I guess.
I mean, but at the time we were making those choices, we didn't necessarily know what kind of an effect it was actually going to be.
Yes.
Like, I went with the one that had sword and shield bonuses.
And one thing I do think is cool, to Grace's point, and one of the reasons why I liked the Nightborn so much in Legion, is because they really did have both. Like, here are some interesting stories about different kinds of people, and it isn't the entire like Nightborn story arc is not kind of hitting the same note over and over again, even though they could justify it by having just introduced this race. Like there's a bunch of Nightborn society stuff that I got to explore and be interested by. And I guess it's not like I say politics, and it's not. I kind of use politics in the sense that politics is societal conflict, and society, and like seeing society I find interesting in fantasy races, and like your interaction with most games with a fantasy race is conflict. But like really I enjoy seeing I like when games just spend a bunch of time showing you what the society of some particular race is like, and there's definitely some of those where I get a sense of that, and others it's like I kind of have a shape on it. Like, what do regular orcs do all day?
Chop trees?
Yeah.
More work.
Yeah, whereas like I see a bunch of different humans. I got a good sense of Nightborn. I don't really know what undead do all day, but I also get a bunch of insights into their society, because even though they kind of have the one note kill all the living thing going on, or at least anxiety about being about the living thing going on, like it's really nuanced. So like that one, and I can totally believe that thing is kind of a societal, like a society-wide anxiety for a culture of undead. And I think that's interesting.
That was one of the reasons why I actually really liked the novel that just came out for this expansion, because they went into sort of the flip side of that, of like people who actually legit missed their families and wanted to see them again.
Yeah. And like
that's, you don't get much, but it was really interesting.
Yeah, that kind of thing is really cool. What does a blood elf wedding look like? Oh. But I mentioned because I just saw a Kultirian wedding, and it's different in interesting ways than a Stormwind wedding, which I've also seen. I kind of get these glimpses. I really like getting these glimpses into what the societies are like, and I always feel like human societies get a lot more airtime than like I could not tell you what. I mean, other than get high because I've wandered around Silvermoon City, I could not tell you what Blood Elves do in their free time, or like what kind of relationship dynamics are going on, or any of that, other than we want to eat magic.
I mean, some of this is just the growth in storytelling that I think has improved over the years. Like in WoW and this expansion, like there's a lot more bits like that just add depth.
Yeah.
Like,
well, I don't think it's just. Oh, sorry.
No, it's just they're we're in this zone full of trolls. Like there are these trolls who obviously care about each other, and like they have interactions between each other. They have interactions with people of other races, and it's just add more depth, something a little bit more interesting without even being part of the story. Just and that goes back to something I think I said last week, but the fact that like when a game takes the time to put little extra pieces in the world that aren't part of a quest or are a reaction to a quest or something, but not they're not there in the quest text. They're like, oh, I turn in this quest and then there's a conversation that happens, and if I feel like sitting and listening to it, I can, or I can wander away, power level. Like, I have the choice.
Yeah.
But it adds so much flavor to the world.
Yeah, it's making that world feel bigger. And like example that always comes to mind for me, and like I'm not thinking just WoW. I'm thinking of a lot of different fantasy settings, but like WoW's sort of on the topic, so here we are. But like night elves are not that you get a bunch of like night elf war history, but I don't really get a good sense of what like the night elf society is like. I know what Tyrande cares about. Like kinda. I know she's real mad all the time, and something about trees. A counterexample that was coming to mind for me was what is it Zendikar? What's the magic setting that's the big like guild city? Ravnica,
yeah.
Yeah. That one I find fascinating because it's a city with a ton of different races, and even in the context of just the flavor text on magic cards, you can get a pretty good idea of like Ravnica society. And I think that's super cool. And it's all different species. It's like, I don't even know if humans are there. They probably are.
Humans everywhere, man. But magic is real big on different races and different things, partly for card mechanics reasons, but
yeah. And I think that's really neat as a sort of counterpoint to my own point. But yeah, my main thought was somebody else I was talking to was also like saw a character I was playing and was like, "Oh, you're playing a human? Like that's super boring. Like what could possibly make you want to play a human in a fantasy game when you've got all these other choices?" Like, well, no, I've got reasons.
So, speaking of overpowered humans in D&D, that's close I can get to a segue.
Maybe you could just skip that segue.
Power creep.
And go on to the next topic.
Okay. Kodra, what the hell is the letter F 6 times?
That's the name of my Twitch stream that I am starting to do a little bit regularly, in which I try and figure out how to speedrun a game.
Are you speedrunning the letter V 6 times?
I am, in fact, speedrunning the letter V 6 times.
Okay, so tell us how you got down this path.
It's always sort of been something that's been on my mind, like, hey, I really like the letter V 6 times. I can play it in a single sitting. That seems like a good candidate for doing a speedrun of something. And so I started doing a little bit of research at speedrun.com. It turns out there is now a glitchless glitchless 100% and glitchless any percent. And basically, this is sort of a topic about my frustration with speedrunning. Is I really want to play a game, and what I don't necessarily want to do is figure out how to break games in half. Like, I want to be testing myself against like my own personal skills to see if I can consistently get faster and faster times. What I'm not necessarily interested in is trying to figure out how to do all of these inputs to break like create unintentional buffered inputs that cause games to break in ways that allow you to complete them much quicker. But yeah, I've been playing and I've done 2 streams, and I've when I had not played this game for a while, and I think it was last week we were talking about comfort gaming, and I was like, my comfort game is the letter V 6 times. I can sit down, I can play it, it feels good. And I played through it, and I got like a 48-minute run, which was not really a great time. But I've managed to get actually like sitting down and focusing and trying to like learn a couple of new tricks. I've managed to get my time down to just under 30 minutes, so I'm really happy about that so far.
I do not have your speedrunning proclivity, but I don't think Oh, go for it.
I was like, what are the fast times even like for that game?
Yeah, like for perspective, like.
So the world record is currently 19 minutes 9 seconds. So I'm a little under 10 minutes off of that time. So, putting it a little bit less harshly, I'm about 50% slower than that person is.
That doesn't seem that far off in my head. Like, I know that's once you get closer to the target, it's going to be, harder and harder and harder, but like it doesn't seem like you're that far off.
Yes and no. Like, obviously there's a lot of even in that run I had over 100 deaths. So and most of those, and in fact none of those were intentional deaths. I screwed up all of the intentional deaths. So I obviously have a lot to get better at. This is currently a category that's not terribly heavily populated. Again, most speedrunners don't like it because they're just trying to figure out how to go through a game as fast as possible. So saying that you're putting rules on the game where you can't use any of those glitches, people are less interested. There's only like 10 people who run this particular thing, and the world record has a number of goofs, including some pretty costly ones. Like, the guy probably could improve his time quite a bit. But yeah, it's not as many people are speedrunning, and why not? I'm probably going to submit the time I got this morning so that I can get my name on the leaderboard. At least get started there.
I mean, I get what you're saying. Like, this has kind of always been my problem with speedrunning as well, is that it's entertaining to watch, but it also kind of feels like that they're making their own warp system effectively.
Yeah, especially in like any percent with telejumps.
Any percent?
Yeah, any percent. You're like, oh, we're not even going to like the end level. We're just like gonna do a jump, and when I'm done with the jump, you see the credit sequence.
It's like what Super Mario World 80% looks like now. They're basically a direct credits warp.
But if there is a game that you are proficient at and can play in like a single sitting, I would suggest checking out to see if there's a time for it, and hey, maybe start running it. It's really fun. And it's especially fun because like you're bad at the start, so you get a lot of improvement right off the bat.
This is kind of like I mean, I don't speedrun stealth games, but it is kind of the way I play stealth games, where it's like, I know I'm pretty good at stealth games and enjoy playing them, so I turn it up. So I've got to be super sneaky and slow, but optimal in play. So I guess I kind of get it on that level.
My equivalent to that is sort of some score attack games, mostly like bullet hell shooters. And yeah, when you start, there's a lot of room to get better.
Sometimes whole dimensions on which you can get better that you didn't even know existed.
It's especially with this game, there's a lot of opportunity where I can be like, okay, in my current run, I am doing a whole bunch of things that are slower than optimal because I'm not good enough to do like the optimal things. But eventually I can be like, all right, I'm going to try and do things the optimal way. And I actually have already started incorporating a couple of those in when I found out they were a little bit easier than they looked like. There's a specific level where basically you have two platforms that are going up and down slightly off kilter, and so you're supposed to sort of use them as a stairs. But if you get like a perfect last second flip, you can sort of use them as a ceiling and floor for your flip. And yeah, I think I died like 50 times when I was first learning it, but I finally got it, and maybe I'll start getting it in, 2 or 3 tries. I managed to get doing things the hard way on my first try, asterisk.
It was your first try after leaving the platform that's supposed to be hard.
Yes. Getting down that chute is tricky.
I think the only game I ever regularly play that's like a non-variable game is Symphony of the Night. And I don't think I play it fast enough to ever do a speedrun.
Symphony of the Night speedruns look a little broken. I don't know if there is a glitchless category for Symphony of the Night.
One sec. Yeah, there's a glitchless any percent and some letters I don't quite understand.
Glitchless any percent would beat just the normal castle, and the fastest time on the leaderboard is 33 minutes, roughly.
Well.
Yeah, but there's also, at the bottom of there, is a 51 minute.
Yep, there's some spread. But this is still beat Symphony of the Night to the first ending in 51 minutes.
I'm not good enough at Symphony of the Night to know how reasonable that is.
It's not reasonable.
No, it's not reasonable at all. Like,
I mean, now that I'm aware that these exist, I'm going to watch one of them, but...
I like hearing the explanations of them.
That's why I like Games Done Quick so much, because they have commentators, and they like to usually talk about the parts that are weird, or even just, like, the quick kill strat for particular bosses requires doing these things in this order, and this is how it works.
Yeah, that's cool. I do like that.
I find it interesting that everyone has shifted over to using Xbox 360 for this.
It loads faster.
Does it?
I mean, Xbox 360 really was the console of choice for that era. I love my PS3, but...
I mean, if you want to get a world record, there are literally no runs for the Maria DXC PSP all bosses.
I don't even know what that means.
Dracula X Chronicles version.
Yeah.
And you have to play as Maria.
You could play as Maria on the Saturn version, too.
Yep.
That's the only reason why I own that copy, was just because it was a weird thing you could do with it. I may or may not have that game on a lot of platforms.
I mean, I now own a Okami on 3 platforms, and I'm considering a 4th.
But yeah, I have been enjoying this more than I thought I would have. I think I'm going to get... my current goal is to get to sub 25 minutes, which I think might be a pretty big wall for me. The problem is I'm not really like wanting to be super competitive to the point where I'm not really willing to play it without a controller, because I just find it feels better to play that game with a controller. But I'm pretty sure ultimately the fact that I'm only playing on the most recent version and I'm playing with a controller is gonna be hard for me to get to those better times. But I'm okay with that, because I'm just gonna be trying to focus on getting myself better and setting reasonable goals for myself.
The controller part shouldn't matter a whole lot, and for glitchless, current patch also shouldn't matter a whole lot.
I do find it funny that the developers of Hollow Knight have managed to release enough content that the speedrunning community has just sort of thrown up their hands and said, fine. Because Hollow Knight, a lot of people were running, 106%?
Yeah, they're running 106% because that's the highest version on the fast version before they fixed a lot of bugs.
But now that the highest percentage is 112, a lot of the 100% runners are sort of just giving in.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we've gone way over time, so we should wrap this up. Hopefully you enjoyed the show, and we will see you again next week. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.